Hi, welcome to Too Far Tech.
What is the actual objective of this video? To show the actual power usage of a third gen HP motherboard with a third gen Intel i5 processor along with Gigabyte 1050 Ti graphics card and the related hardware. The power usage is actually going to be much lower for a newer generation system like the 9th or 10th or even 7th and 8th gen Intel processors. So why is this video relevant? To show you that you don't need a 600 watts power supply for everything, especially in this case or cases similar to these. Because these days expensive power supply has become the de facto standard. Anything less than 600 watts for a build would get crucified. 600 watts is a lot of power and most of the builds seldom use even half of that power, and today I'm going to show that to you. Typically the setup or the configuration decides the amount of power and thus the power supply that must be used. My main concern in any power supply for a quality build would be actually the quality of the power supply unit rather than the rating. Of course, if the power requirements are going to be 400 watts, I wouldn't go ahead and use a 250 watts power supply, which will actually be a very bad experience. So I always want a power supply that lasts forever and doesn't cause any damages to my PC components. You can read or hear online from people having bad experiences that the power supply blew up and it damaged the motherboard, the processor, maybe your hard drive, etc. So you really don't want that to happen. So let's be on the safe side. Let's look at the components that we're going to be using today. The first component would be the HP 350 watts OEM power supply. This comes with the HP Pro 3500 PC. Then the HP Intel H61 chipset motherboard, the Intel i5 3470 processor, the OEM HP CPU cooler, the OEM CPU case fan, a standard SATA 2.5 inch SSD, a typical 3.5 inch SATA hard drive, and the GTX 1050 Ti. So first of all, let's see the surge power usage when powering on the PC. So how much power does it take? And that would be approximately 73 watts peak, and it settles down to a lower power. And the total power consumption of this PC under no load, that means if the PC is idle without any usage, which almost 0% CPU usage, would be 37 watts. Since the CPU is under the load when the PC is in BIOS, you can see the idle is close to 40 watts. That's why it's not a good idea to enter the BIOS without installing a proper CPU cooler for the processor. And when you push the PC without a graphics card or with only CPU on full load, you are getting approximately 95 watts of peak power usage, and the total power consumption of this setup with GPU and CPU on full load is around 155 watts. Now most of the device consumes some more power during initial turn on. So considering all the components that can be added like extra hard drive, USB, keyboard, mouse, DVD drives, we can consider the total power consumption to be totally under 200 watts peak at any given point for this setup. I'm not talking about if you have an RGB, I'm talking about a standard setup. All you need is a good 250 watts power supply to run a PC with similar configuration. And if you consider your peace of mind, let's say you can go up to a 300 watts PSU to keep this PC running 24/7 on full load without any issues. Now, even though I showed you clear proof of what actually this PC requires or would be using, let me show you another way that you can find the same or similar information, because obviously you wouldn't have a power meter in hand, and of course you have to buy a power supply when you are setting up the PC. And this is where this website comes in handy, which is the autovision.com, which has a power supply calculator page. Now this link is added in the description below. So once you come to this page here, there are many details. You can go into those details and read all of that. So but let me quickly show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to spec out the same setup, by selecting one CPU, and I'm going to type i5 3470, which is the processor that I had used there. And I'm going to leave this here. I'm going to leave the total usage as 90, because that would be the peak of most people's capability when even if you're pushing the PC to full load, going with the 8 GB single DIMM module. And I'm going to select the NVIDIA graphics card as the 1050 Ti, should be somewhere around here. So that was this one here. No second graphics card. I'm going to select one SATA SSD and one standard 7200 RPM SATA hard drive. And then next we are going to leave all of this empty. We already have the keyboard and mouse here. And when it comes to this side, I'm just going to add one extra that's for the CPU cooler, and one extra case fan that is actually being used there. So let's keep these things as default 8 hour per day usage, and I hit calculate. When you do that, you're just going to get the best recommendation, and it says under the full load wattage, which is 235 watts, which we show is an exaggerated figure because they are taking the default maximum power rating and adding a little bit headroom to that to get to this figure. And even if it is at 235 watts, which actually would not happen, the recommended PSU is only 285 watts, which is clearly shown here. And my recommendation was the PSU from 250 to 300 watts, which you saw above. So that's pretty much. So since there is no proper 250 or 300 watts branded power supplies available there, obviously you should take something like the Thermaltake 430 watts 80 plus power supply that is being recommended here. So I hope you understand the whole concept here. So this is pretty much, and it also shows the amperage of the combined usage of the 12 volt and 5 volt rails on the machine. So if you have any comment or suggestions or questions, do ask below in the comment section. If you like the video, give us a thumbs up. If you want to see more such content, subscribe so we get the motivation to dig into such facts. Next we are going to have a video that's going to show you how much of a power is actually consumed by a PSU, and for example an SSD and a 3.5-inch hard drive, so you actually understand how much power these devices are actually going to use.
So thank you very much. I hope you all enjoy, and if you need anything from us, you can contact via Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, or even call us in the number. So thank you. You have a wonderful day.